Okay, I've got 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call the April 26th meeting of the Shelby Township Planning Commission to order, and I'll ask the secretary to call the roll, please.
Ms. Gonzalez.
Here, Shelby Township.
Mr. Meredith. Mr. Meredith.
I believe he indicated he was going to be absent.
Oh, okay. Absent. Mr. Apone.
Here.
And where are you at?
Mr. Pone, your location?
Shelby Township.
Mr. Turner.
Here, Shelby Township.
Mr. Snyder.
Here, Shelby Township.
Mr. Grott.
Here in Shelby Township.
Chairman Moffett, we have a quorum, and I'm also here in Shelby Township.
Okay, and I'm also participating in Shelby Township. Next item is approval of the agenda. If there are no additions or subtractions, I'll entertain a motion. Moved by Moore, support by Turner. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is approval of the minutes from the April 12th meeting.
So move.
Support.
Moved by Turner, support by Grott. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, this evening we've got two main items. The first being site plan number 21-12, PUD number 2, Mark Gloreski, Shelby Community Center, final PUD. This is a public hearing, so we'll begin off by asking the secretary to read the notice as it was published.
Charter Township of Shelby, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the public hearing will be held via Zoom. The meeting will be held on April 26, 2021 at 7 p.m. You may participate at no cost in the virtual meeting by calling the following number. Dial 1-312-626-6799, meeting ID number 831-3766-9175. Notice is hereby given that the Planning Commission for the Charter Township of Shelby, Macomb County, Michigan, has received a request for final approval for the following planned unit development. Applicant Mark Gloes. North Point Development, LLC, Shelby Commerce Center, 4825 Northwest 41st Street, Suite 500, Riverside, Missouri, 64150. PUD request, site plan number 21-12, PUD number 2. Proposing 3 industrial buildings. Location, vacant land located west of Van Dyke, south side of 23 Mile Road. Legal description is as follows. Planning Commission will meet on Monday, April 26, 2021 at 7 p.m. via Zoom for the purpose of holding a public hearing on the planned unit development application. Please follow the instructions to attend the meeting via Zoom. Dial 312-626-6799 and enter the meeting ID access ID number 831-3766-9175. Please check the Shelby Township Planning website for further information on the meeting. The planned unit development application and site plan may be examined at the Planning and Zoning Department in the Municipal Building Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Written comments may be submitted to the Planning Commission at the above address prior to the hearing. Oral comments will be heard during the public hearing. This notice is provided pursuant to the requirements of Michigan Public Act 110 of 2006 as amended. Shelby Township Planning Commission, Jerome Moffett, Chair, Raquel Moore, Secretary. This was published on April 10th, 2021 in the Macomb Daily. And bear with me here, because I know there were people notified. I just can't read it. Hold on a second.
494 property owners and the 2 applicants were notified on April 9th.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to help. To the attorney, Ms. Denowith, I think.
Good evening.
Must be nice enough for Mr. Kirk to be golfing. So we're fortunate to have you. Did the notification meet all legal requirements?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it does.
Okay, great. Thank you. And could you explain the uses under the present zoning and whether this special land use is appropriate to this district?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is the rezoning by planned unit development plan for several parcels as set forth in the notice. This is actually the second step under our Shelby Township planned unit development ordinance, which is section 3.37. This is an appropriate use under the ordinance and as planned as set forth in this final step.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Moore, did we receive any correspondence on this public hearing?
No, we did not. Actually, we did receive an email, a piece of correspondence from a Mr. Lipsky this afternoon, which we all received. And he is disapproving of the project.
Okay, thank you. All right, if everyone could mute themselves and only engage your speakers when you're called upon, please. I don't want to call out names, so if you could take a look, take a double check. I see most folks have complied.
I've muted the feedback, so you're good to go.
Oh, all right, great, thank you. Okay, so the format for the public hearing will be as follows. And again, this is because it's a PUD request. It's a two-step process. The first we've completed, were the preliminary, which presented what they were proposing. We did have a public hearing. There was a recommendation that was then passed on to the board. The Board of Commissioners or Board of Trustees concur with that recommendation, and now it's back for the final review, to which we will make a recommendation based on the final documents that are submitted. Then it'll go back to the board for their final decision. How the format? I'll have the petitioner or representative come state what they're requesting, the reasons for it. I'll then bring it back to the board. I'll probably bring the planner next to offer a little bit more detail on the history, what the planning department's thoughts are. I'll then open up to the commissioners for any questions or comments that we may have for the petitioner. I'll then open the public hearing, and then anyone is willing to offer their comments or ask questions. And then finally, I'll bring the petitioner back to address whatever issues were raised during the conversation. So at this point, is the petitioner or representative here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am.
Okay, would need your name and address, and that goes frankly for anyone who wishes to address the body, name and address.
Good thing, thanks. Mark Loyeski with North Point Development, 4805 Montgomery Road, Suite 310, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45212. Here with several members of our team, as well as some of our local consultants that we've hired for any questions you guys may have. Would it be okay if I shared my screen for a quick presentation?
Sure.
It's been enabled.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. So again, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, this presentation came before you guys back in February, I believe. And at that point, it was in the preliminary stage. We have since gone back and we've finalized our engineering drawings, and we've submitted those drawings to the township as well as to the county for their review. The presentation that I have tonight is relatively similar to what we presented prior, because we did have a fair amount of detailed information in our preliminary application. However, we have taken a few things a little bit farther just to hopefully provide some more clarity and maybe answer some of the questions that came up during the last hearing. So again, I'll breeze through a portion of this just to save time for everybody tonight. But again, here's an overview of the property. Just want to hit again on, the reason that we're seeking this petition tonight is this property does have environmental contamination that was uncovered back when the residential developer was attempting to develop the property. Ford then took it back and is going to sell it to us, and at the time of closing, there will be a restrictive covenant placed on the property that limits any sort of residential use, and it really limits a lot of the uses that could be contemplated for this property. So as part of that environmental contamination and part of that restrictive covenants, we are working with the state jurisdictions to address some of those environmental concerns. We're going to continue to monitor the environmental contamination on the site. We're going to provide some stormwater pervious liners in an attempt to keep the groundwater that's contaminated separated from our surface water. We're going to provide different controls under the foundations to help control vapor coming up through the site. And then we're going to provide specific gaskets on our utilities to help any of that contamination, prevent it from coming into any of our utilities. And lastly, we feel that we meet the criteria for zoning in Shelby Township due to the fact that the Shelby Township Master Plan does recommend the site for future land use as industrial. So again, just a quick overview of some of the zoning around here. So heavy manufacturing to the east and west, light manufacturing to the north, and then R12 residential to the south. We are seeking a couple of deviations here. Maximum building height. So we're seeking a 45-foot maximum building height where the current maximum is 35 feet. And then we're seeking to land bank some parking. We've done several studies in our parks around the country and have determined that the parking that we need is represented in what we're proposing to build with phase one, but we do have room for any additional parking if we were to get a tenant that comes along that may require additional parking. These buildings are going to be built on a speculative basis. We feel that this is a product that's really needed in the Detroit market. If you were to look at the vacancy rate currently in this area, it's very low, under 3%. And actually, we do have one potential tenant identified that we're negotiating with for a portion of building one. So we're already seeing the activity in this market, and we think it's a really exciting opportunity for this area and for a redevelopment such as this. Again, these are some architectural elevations that we had presented at the last meeting. Currently, our elevations that we're choosing to go with are represented in the bottom left-hand corner. That's pretty typical for what we would be building on this property. Again, the overall colored concept plan for everybody to see. These sight lines were presented at the last meeting. But again, we just want to reiterate that along the southern property line, we will be building a heavily landscaped 20-foot tall berm with a 10-foot tall vinyl fence on top of that berm. Which really, as you can see by these sight lines, helps prevent that view shed from the southern property owners, and the width of the berm really helps set this property back from the residential properties. The photometric study, we've done several photometric studies here and have continued to refine it with our updated site plans. This photometric study, as you are looking at it, the black line that you see is the area where the light should spread, if you will, reaches 0-foot candles, which the township ordinance states that we need to be 0-foot candles at the property line, and the exterior of the black border is the property line. So you can see that we need and even exceed in a lot of areas the foot candle requirements in the township. The one additional piece of information that I did want to focus on tonight that we have further refined is the landscaping along the berm. I know during the last public hearing, there were some images submitted by some of the residents of some other berms within Shelby Township that they liked, specifically behind a Target, I believe. Those pictures showed, dense evergreen vegetation as well as a nice berm. So we wanted to really focus on the final landscape plans along this berm. So again, our berm runs along the east line from about here all the way across and kind of wraps the corner along the west property line. And as you can see, it's extremely heavily landscaped. So these sort of dense clusters of smaller trees here represent evergreen trees. So again, there's a staggered double row of evergreens that are really going to grow up into a nice wall. These larger circles represent deciduous trees. And then we have several clusters of shrubs and some perennial plants around here. So in all, this berm is going to include over 150 deciduous trees, nearly 300 evergreen trees, 668 shrub plants, and 245 perennial plants. So we feel that with this dense vegetation that we're providing, we should greatly exceed the look of those berms that the residents submitted that they like. And that's not to mention the 10-foot tall fence that's going to run along the very top of the berm, just to provide some extra noise buffering, as well as any view shed while we're waiting for those plants to get mature and grow up to their full height. So we feel that we've really provided a nice buffer along that southern property line to help shield these property owners. We're also keeping a row of very large existing evergreen trees that are portion on the residential property and a portion on our property. Those have grown to a nice mature height, and we're going to commit to keep those and just to help further screen it while that vegetation is continuing to grow. We did do a noise study here, so we took noise levels on the existing site just to capture any ambient noise that may be coming from 23 Mile Road or the Amazon site or anywhere else around the property. And then we put in our proposed development. We modeled the traffic coming down our interior spine road. We modeled the trucks that are backing up into the truck courts, and really show that we are far below the township requirement. So the township requirement for noise levels is 65 decibels. So this yellow line that you see here is a range of 50 to 65, and the red line is anything above 65. So you can see that we are really dampening the noise with that berm, the landscaping, and the fence on top of it, and we are far below any township noise requirements by the time you get to these residential properties. We did conduct a traffic impact study for this development. The one thing that we are really focusing on our entrance is we are going to provide signage, and we're going to talk to all of our tenants about the need to head eastbound on 23 Mile. What we don't want is any non-local deliveries heading westbound on 23 Mile into the more heavily populated residential areas. So we're going to place signage up at the entrance. And again, we're going to educate all of our tenants to direct all traffic eastbound towards M53. Which will help alleviate any trucks hopefully traveling through those residential areas. And again, this is a reiteration of our presentation last time, but the Shelby Charter Township Code does require that we meet 4 criteria to qualify for a zone change. Those 4 criteria are listed here, and we feel that we do meet all 4 criteria, specifically being that we meet the future land use plan for Shelby Charter Township. And again, lastly, in summary, environmentally contaminated site, there's going to be restrictive covenants placed on the site. Our use is permitted within that, and we're working with the state regulators to, assist in keeping that contamination from spreading any further, and to really protect this site from any further contamination. We've modified the plan. We feel that we've exceeded the landscape requirements on that southern property line to help shield those residential properties. This is a very large development, nearly $90 million, with an estimated 670 jobs being created. And again, our proposed use conforms with the future land use designation and the restrictive covenants, and we meet all the criteria required for the Shelby Township to consider this for rezoning. So with that, again, we're happy to answer any questions. I do have the plans if you guys would like to reference any pages of the plans or like more detail on what we're proposing. I'd be happy to share that tonight.
Okay, thank you. One thing that was shared with the board, I don't know if you have a copy of it, was the wall, the 10-foot wall that you're proposing.
Yes.
Can you share? Do you have a copy of that? Do you have a picture of that wall?
I believe I have the meeting minutes pulled up, which have that in there. So what we had done, again, sorry, I'm not in the minutes. Give me 1 second, I'll pull them up here. What we had done is we we had originally proposed a 10-foot tall board-on-board wooden fence, and there was some feedback from the neighborhood that may not be well taken care of over time, or maybe unsightly. So what we had gone into, what we had discussed to do was propose a vinyl fence, a 10-foot tall vinyl fence.
Yeah.
And I'll pull up that picture here. Just 1 second. And we had taken 2 pictures of the potential vinyl fence that we were considering, and we had sent it to the residents to the south, and we had asked for their opinion on what they might like to see. So we had sent one that was a cream color that really kind of looked like a wooden board-on-board fence, if you will. And then we had sent one that was of integral color and kind of had a cast stone look to it. So we had sent them both options, and I believe this is the option that they expressed the most favor of. So this was included in our staff comments from Ms. Misich.
The board received it. I just want to make sure that everyone that's participating this evening sees it as well. So thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call on the planner to offer her comments on the submission.
Thank you, Mr. Moppett. So as we mentioned, that this is the final PUD. After the board makes their recommendation tonight, after the commission makes their recommendation tonight, it will go to the township board for final review. So at this time, as Mr. Glowacki said, they had pretty well detailed plans throughout this whole process during the preliminary review and the rezoning process. So I've gone through the plans. We've made some notes on that. As far as the fencing goes, as Mr. Glowacki said, that is the fence that he showed that the residents would like. So the correction will have to be made to the plans. I believe on the plans it showed the other panel, vinyl panel fence. So that's one. We will need to see lighting fixtures and details. Cross section of the berm will need to be included as well on the plans. And the one major thing is the landscape plans had differed from the preliminary submittal to the final submittal. And I know that there was extensive plantings that were relocated from the site onto the berm, because originally the berm was a smaller berm and not as many plantings. So with that being said, I would like the preliminary landscape plans to remain as far as the east and west property line, including the front of the along 23 Mile from the preliminary plan, and not the final plan that was submitted. The plantings along 23 Mile were staggered, and I think that's a better look than what was proposed for the final plan. As far as that goes, I know the engineer had a few comments that can be addressed, but at this time, as long as those items are taken care of, I really don't have a problem with the current plan.
Okay, Mr. Glowacki, your thoughts on the landscaping? I mean, are you willing to
we will certainly take a look at the landscape plan and making sure we are more in line with what we proposed at the preliminary. We are far exceeding the minimum requirement for plants across the entire site. And as Ms. Misich mentioned, we did relocate some of those to the southern property line to assist in that view shed. But we would be happy to relook at that and meet any requirements that she would like us to see.
All right, there we go. There we go. You'll meet what the planning department tells you to do.
We certainly will.
That's what I need to hear. Thank you. Okay, to the board. Are there any of the commissioners have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Turner?
just a clarification, Mr. Glowacki. I've heard 3 different numbers used for the berm: 18 foot, 20 feet, and 22 feet. Can you give me the height that this berm will be, hopefully more toward the 20 or 22?
So it varies, and if you'll let me share my screen one more time, I can kind of illustrate that a little bit better.
Enabled.
Thank you. So I have our landscape plan here. So it varies due to the room we have to plant. So our most narrow portion is right here. And the reason that it's the shortest portion is right there. And that's because we have less room to construct the berm due to trying to keep some of this existing vegetation. So all of these plants right here are existing large pine trees, which were planted as part of the residential development, but they did get onto our property for a portion of it. So in an effort to save those, we were squeezed on the overall width of the berm, which reduced the height. So in this area, it's 18 feet. It gets up to approximately 22 feet right in the center area, and then dips back down to 20 feet over in this eastern area. So I would say it's on average a little over 19 feet, but it's minimum 18 feet, maximum 22 feet.
All right. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, any other questions or comments, Mr. Turner?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. And as we've indicated a couple times before, that because it's a PUD request, it's the second public hearing that we've held on this. But all remarks that are made this evening, plus previous comments, will be shared with the township board when they make the final decision. Again, we are a recommending body, and ultimately the township board is the legislative body and will make the final decision on this request. At this point, and I'm going to ask our host to explain the most efficient way for us to do this. Anyone who wishes to raise their hand and offer a comment or a question, you're free to do so. We just need your name and your address. And again, it's not a debate. It's we'll take the comments if there are questions or need some comments that need some clarification. I'll take note of those and then try to do our best, either through the petitioner or our staff, to answer those questions. So, Nick, do you want to tee this up, please?
Andrew, but thank you, Mr. Chair. We will be using Zoom's virtual hand raising to let us know that you want to speak. If you're on a computer, go to the bottom of the screen where it says participants and click on the button that says raise hand. If you're on a smartphone and using the Zoom app, you're going to have to look for the 3 dots in the lower corner of your application. Press those dots and then press raise hand. If you're on a regular phone, you'll have to press *9 to raise your hand. And once you've been called upon, you'll have to press *6 to unmute yourself.
Oh, there's Mike Grobel.
Okay, Mr. Chair, first off, we have Bill Carson. Bill Carson, would you like to speak?
My wife Nancy has a question.
Nancy Carson, 49980 Regent Street, Shelby Township. At one of these meetings, I think it was the second Planning Commission meeting, the idea of building the berm first before any other construction was begun was brought up. And I just wondered if any further discussion had been made about building the berm first.
Okay.
Okay, next up we have Mike Grobel. Would you like to speak? You're going to have to unmute yourself.
Yes, my name is Mike Grobel, 49997 Lexington Avenue East, Shelby Township, Michigan. I've consulted with other board members here in Central Park, and we're all of the opinion that the site plan improvements that have been promised over the past 6 months have been incorporated into the site plans that have been presented. You have discussed the one thing that we thought was an exception, and you've covered it, that we'd like to see that 10-foot high vinyl wall be specified as the simulated stone privacy fence and sound wall. And we'd offer that we'd like to see it either in the brown granite or the beige granite color if possible. But beyond that, there's a couple more concerns we have with the eventual implementation of the site plan that's not readily evident just from looking at the site plan drawings themselves. Groundwater is an important natural resource that's been all too often abused because it was out of sight and out of mind. It's groundwater contamination at this site, which was identified in your 2017 master plan update as the reason for recommending the rezoning of this site from residential to industrial. Therefore, I think tonight we should also have some discussion about the site plan's possible impact on the groundwater beneath the property, as well as the plans for remediation of the TCE contamination at this site. The groundwater beneath what's now the Amazon property was contaminated many years ago with the industrial solvent known as TCE. Over the years, plumes of contaminated groundwater have migrated beneath the adjacent properties, both to the east and to the southeast. Ford Motor Company installed a permeable reactive barrier back in November of 2013 to neutralize a plume that had entered into the Manor's condominium property. Ford monitors the performance of that PRB on a regular basis and supplies the data to the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, as well as to the Manor's Condo Board of Directors. A TCE remediation project using brownfield redevelopment funds was also completed on the Amazon site more than 3 years ago. That the groundwater beneath the very northwest corner of the Manors remains at just above the 5 parts per billion limit set by the EPA for residential property. The data provided by Ford also indicates that the upper level of the groundwater in this vicinity of the PRB has dropped nearly 2.5 feet since 2013. The design of the stormwater management system installed on the property back in 2018 has significantly reduced the volume of stormwater available to recharge the groundwater beneath their property and the adjacent properties to the south and east. We believe that this has had a negative impact on the performance of the PRB and also on the average water levels that we see in the detention pond located between the Manors and Kensington condos. It's now so low that we can no longer even install a fountain in that pond. And why am I bringing up the Amazon storm management system? That's because it's the same type of stormwater management system that's proposed to be installed on the North Point site. Ford installed 2 PRBs on the east side of the North Point property back in 2014, and the site plans that you've been shown indicate that they've been protected with a easement, which is a good thing since the PRBs are a passive device that needs to remain undisturbed so it can continue doing its job of neutralizing the plume of contaminated TCE in the groundwater before it reaches the property line at Ford Central Park. However, in order to operate properly, these PRBs require a continuation of the groundwater flows they were designed originally to intercept. When the North Point property is fully developed, we believe that a similar diversion of the stormwater away from the groundwater will likely make the current situations worse. Not only will the Manor's detention pond get even drier, the PRBs next to the township's park will also receive less groundwater flow. In conclusion, we believe that the Planning Commission's site plan review of the North Point development must address the current performance of the 2 PRBs that are just upstream of the township park in order to establish a baseline. In other words, how well are they operating? How effective are they currently before any work's done on this site? And then secondly, we need to address the potential negative effects that the North Point stormwater management system will have on A, the recharging of the groundwater in the soils below, B, the future performance of those 2 PRBs next to the township park, and C, the average water levels we're seeing in both of the detention ponds at the Manors and Kensington site, as well as to the pond at the township park. So hopefully the Planning Commission will address these issues before any action is taken to approve the North Point site plan. Thank you.
Okay.
Next up, we have area code 586, last 3 numbers, 965. Press *6 to unmute yourself, please. Area code 586, last 3 numbers, 965. Would you like to speak? *6 to unmute yourself. Okay, moving on. Area code 586, last 3 numbers, 957. *6 to unmute yourself if you'd like to speak.
Yes, my name is Janet Gomolinsky, address 50188 Blado Court, Shelby Township 48317. I have 2 questions for the developer. One, is there any feasibility of filling in the existing berm that is south at the southern end of their property. There are many spaces that are wide and open. That's number one. Number two, the people or employees that they are going to have to develop this property, landscaping and otherwise, are they from local cities, townships, or are people that they have coming in to do this work? Those are my two concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. One more time. Area code 586, last three numbers, 965. Would you like to speak? *6 to unmute yourself.
Oh, yes. My name is Kenneth Lane, and I live on Lexington West. And I was wondering about the berm height, the building heights that are going to be there, and how long are they in comparison to the Amazon building?
So the berm height or the building heights? Building
Yes.
lengths? Building lengths. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I think
No one
that's
Has
the last.
raised
Okay. Great. Thank you. So I'll have to ask the petitioner to engage back again. First, building the berm. When do you now? Would that be the first thing that you do, or once you talk, maybe?
Yep.
Roughly what timeline would be?
So the first thing we'll be doing is our earthwork operations. So we'll come in and we'll strip the topsoil and begin to build our building pads. And at that time, we'll use the dirt, the topsoil and the additional dirt from the site to build the berm. So it'll be done in conjunction with our preliminary earthwork operation. So there'll be excavators moving throughout the entire site while they're building the berm, because we need dirt from the rest of the site to build the berm. But it will be one of the first things we build.
Okay, so berm and wall go up before the buildings go up.
The fence probably won't go up until the very end when the landscaping is done. So what will most likely happen is that we'll build the berm and we'll put some temporary seating on it. And then throughout the course of construction, once construction is getting close to being done, so say next spring, they'll come in and do the landscaping, the final grass cover, and then install the fence at that time.
So brown, beige, granite composite on the for the wall. Is there?
Yeah, he either said brown granite or beige granite. We'll specify. Right. I believe that's what he asked for. So we'll specify both of those on the plans, and whichever one's available, we will go with that.
Okay. Okay. And so in a quite lengthy conversation on sort of the remediation process, and so maintaining water or not retaining water, or the problem of retaining water on your site. Why don't you talk through that process, and then Julie, I'm going to come to you next with that same question.
Sure. And we do have Adam Patton from PM Environmental on the line. He is our environmental consultant here that's working. So if there's any specific questions, I may let him address about the
yeah, why don't you? Well, you heard this. He's on the call. He heard the question. So why don't you bring him on and
Adam, would you mind jumping in and talk about PRB?
Sure. Yeah, I'm available on right now. So I appreciate the question.
So Adam, I need your name and your address.
Oh,
you're not special. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, Adam Patton. The address is 3340 Ranger Road, Lansing, Michigan. So we had the same question relative to part of our due care planning. And when I say due care planning, that is planning the development relative to the environmental conditions that are present so that we don't do anything to make it worse. And as part of that, we did an extensive interview with Ford, who owns the PRBs and who installed them, also has a groundwater monitoring program to ensure their performance. We took a look at the actual groundwater depths, the flow rates, and the overall change in elevation over time, as well as the concentrations. And we developed what's called a groundwater fate and transport model. We did extensive modeling under various hypothetical situations, including the development that is planned for the property, and saw no effects in either the elevation of the water and more specifically, the trajectory of the groundwater plumes. In other words, development of the site will not change groundwater flow. Development of the site will not change the trajectory of the TCE specifically that is heading towards and is being treated by the permeable reactive barriers that are in place.
Now, there were concerns that the water levels through the development will decrease, and that will affect the impact on the neighboring parcels, both the park and then the residential community. What's your comment to that?
Sure. I didn't model the pond specifically, but we're not seeing any change in groundwater flow that ultimately would cause it to bypass the PRBs, which was the point of the model.
Okay. Mr. Glasgow, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, as far as the flow of water across the site. So currently the flow of surface water across the site is heading from west to east towards the park property on the east. Our stormwater system will capture the stormwater from our development in pipes in a closed system and pipe it to the northeast corner of our property where we have a forebay. Now that forebay will be lined, as I mentioned, due to attempting to not mix the contaminated groundwater with the surface water. But then that forebay will spill over from a pipe into the existing pond that is on the park property. So, there is an effort to keep some surface water and, potentially recharge some groundwater. We do have some grass area to the east of our parking that we were going to let continue to flow naturally. However, township regulations require us to collect even the grass area in a storm system and pipe it to our pond. So we will be taking all the water to our pond and not letting it into the pond that's on the park property.
Okay. I guess, Ms. Misich, to the fact that the extent that will the state continue to monitor this? Or maybe Mr. Glasgow, you can kind of comment as well, because there was the contamination and what responsibility does Ford have even going forward, even after the sale?
From what I understand, Mr. Moffett, is that the state does monitor those TCE and Eagle more specifically.
Yeah.
And Adam can speak to that as well, but there are monitoring wells on the site, but Adam can maybe speak to their monitoring program.
Sure. There are quite a few monitoring wells that are present at the property. As part of the redevelopment, we are actually going to be abandoning those and replacing them to ensure that they remain present post-development. Those include areas across the property, including adjacent to the PRBs. Ford will continue to monitor those in accordance with the plans that it's outlined with the state of Michigan, specifically Eagle, post-development. And so there will be a monitoring program in place that will continue by Ford and reported to Eagle.
Okay, thank you. The existing berm to the south, so is your plan just to sort of tear down what's there and rebuild it up, or?
I'm not certain that I fully understood that question.
Okay.
As far as the berm to the south, I believe there's a small berm on the residential property. I'm not sure if that's what they're referring to.
Okay. Which you can't touch, so.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's where the evergreens are concentrated.
Yeah. Your plan for what you're proposing on the berm, the 18, the 22 feet with the 10-foot fence and the plantings was pretty detailed. So.
And it's all new. It's all brand new construction.
Great. How about using local contractors?
Yeah, so we have signed on our general contractor. That's going to be Shoncheck Construction, and they are local to the area. They are the ones that are responsible for hiring subconsultants. However, I believe most of their subconsultants or subcontractors are going to be local. But our general contractor is local, and they generally bring local subcontractors with them.
Okay, I think specifically it was also landscaping was raised as well, which.
Yeah, they probably haven't selected their landscaping contractor yet. If I were to guess.
Yeah, I would hope not, since you're not approved yet. So, all right. The next item or last item I got was the building height and length. If you could just sort of restate restate those. So
Yes,
the length being along the southern border, the two buildings that are on the southern border, what were the lengths of those two, and then the height there?
Okay, so I'll speak to height first. So again, these buildings are what we call 36-foot clear, which means that the space from the floor to the first roof joist is 36 feet in height. That translates when you factor in the pitch of the roof, specifically on the cross docks and the larger buildings. That translates into a building height that's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 44 feet and some change. So we've asked for not to exceed 45 feet. The Amazon building, I don't know the height specifically, but they typically don't go anything less than a 36-foot clear building. So if it's not taller, it's definitely the same height as what we're going to propose. And then I'm going to take a quick measurement here for the length of the building because I don't know it off the top of my head. So our building 3, which is the building that is on the southwest corner, is 660 feet wide. And then building 1, which is on the east, is 354 feet wide at its widest point.
Okay. All right, thank you. Ms. Misich, do you have any final comments?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Moved by Turner. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. So our recommendation this evening must be based on the following standards: the compatibility with adjacent land uses, consistent with and promote the intent and purpose of the special land use, compatibility with the natural environment, consistent with the capacities of public services and facilities affected by the proposed use, protect the public health, safety, and welfare, and the adequacy of public access to the site. We may recommend approval, we may disapprove the request, or we could table it to evaluate it further. At this point, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Ms. Moore.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward to the Township Board the final planned unit development, site plan number 21-12, PUD number 2, for North Point Development LLC, requesting approval for the planned unit development with the finding that the proposal has met the requirements of the zoning ordinance and applicable PUD requirements. Number 1, the proposed planned unit development is consistent with the land use pattern recommended in the township's adopted master plan. The planned unit development plan has sufficient access to major thoroughfare. Number 3, the proposed use will not interfere with or discharge the appropriate development and use of adjacent land and buildings or unreasonably affect their value.
Support.
Moved by Moore, support by Apone. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Apone?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Grott?
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next item under old business, site plan number 13-03, Mulberry Meadows, north of 22 Mile, west of Mound. Ms. Misich, is that you or?
Yes, it's me, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification purposes, Tim Wood from the building department contacted me. Apparently, there was a number of fences that was approved for this development, while the site plan indicated that there was no fencing to be permitted in this development. I went back in the minutes and tried to look for some sort of clarification on this. The Planning Commission did not seem to have any issues with the installation of fences. So we're not exactly sure how that note got on the site plan, not permitting fences. However, the master plan, the master deed and the bylaws had verbiage on allowing fences by approval from the homeowners association. So with that being said, I just wanted to, bring this to the planning commission and make sure that everybody is okay with this request that fencing be allowed for this development and with the approval of homeowners association. And we can omit that note from the site plan.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Anyone have any questions? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Turner.
I will move to allow fences for site plan number 13-03 for Mulberry Meadows, located on the west side of Mountain Road, north of 22 Mile Road.
Support.
Support. Oh.
Moved by Turner, support by Snyder. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Commissioner Turner?
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Grott?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Pone?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next item, planning director's report. Do you have anything, Julie?
I do not.
Okay. Final item, business from the floor. Does anyone wish to make to comment on anything? I don't see any hand raised, so I'll move to adjournment. Does anyone wish to make that motion?
So move.
Moved by Turner, support by Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We stand adjourned. All right. Everyone be good. Be healthy.
Good night.
Night.
Good night. Thank you.